just one, whose movies have earned a total of $1 billion. Steven Spielberg. You know his work: Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And now a summer doubleheader, Poltergeist and E.T. E.T., the extraterrestrial creature, is the star of Spielberg's latest movie, already a box office blockbuster, a record of $35 million in 10 days. Now, how did Steven Spielberg, a young man, rise to such singular prominence? Well, Steve Fox is here to tell us. Steve?
Hugh Spielberg's story, his success, his fame, his fortune, is really the story of a dream come true. His dream, brought to life because Steven Spielberg had both the courage and the ability to pursue the fantasies of his childhood.
Pour it on, pour it on. Pour it in your ear, pour it on. You know, I wish I was really good at these games, because if I was really good at these games, I would do this for a living. Now, that was good. I do this to relax.
It's hard to really know whether Steven Spielberg's favorite toys are the video games he has all over his home and office, or the movie cameras he's been playing with ever since he was a kid.
And action!
At age 34, Spielberg is a child at heart, and the combination of his youthful enthusiasm, vivid imagination, and cinematic expertise has made his movies the world's most financially successful. E.T. the Extraterrestrial is Spielberg's best and most personal film to date.
That was wonderful. And I really wanted to make the kind of movie that I remember seeing when I was a kid, the kind of film that stuck with me for many, many years, about growing up and about relationships and kind of a love story between a young boy and an 800-year-old creature from outer space.
Do you talk? You know, talk. Me, human. Boy. Elliot. Elliot.
Throughout his career, Steven Spielberg has been entertaining audiences by transforming his own hopes and his fears into films. E.T. is a cinematic version of his pleasant dreams, his happy fantasies, while the other film that he released this summer represents his nightmares. Poltergeist is a ghost story thriller set in what amounts to Spielberg's own hometown, suburbia, USA.
Hello? They're here.
When I was a kid, I was afraid of everything. I was afraid of closets. I was always afraid of something hiding under my bed. I was afraid of the tree outside the window. I had a rather overactive imagination. I had applied all of that to the darker side of fear and terror.
In the past 3 weeks, Poltergeist and E.T. have together earned more than $60 million. And in the past 7 years, all of Spielberg's films have totaled more than $1 billion at the box office, making him a millionaire several times over. So you might wonder, as we did, how come his movies are so successful so often?
Well, I think I'm the perfect audience. I think that I do what I do because I just love going to movies. Movies are really about the child in all of us. When a movie makes you cry, you're really a kid again.
For skinny little Stevie Spielberg from Phoenix, Arizona, son of a computer specialist and a former concert pianist who divorced when he was young, making movies was a way to compete and get attention, a source of self-pride, a way to overcome his lack of popularity and his loneliness.
I never, ever got in with the insiders, or the real insiders, from school, sports, jocks, that kind of thing. I was always the wimp.
The wimp?
Yeah, I was always the wimp. But I really enjoyed...
and movies let you do what?
Well, movies sort of just gave me a chance to, you know, to be the leader of my own group, I guess.
Movies like this one, made when Spielberg was only 12 years old, using his father's 8mm camera, old World War II footage, and planes and a runway borrowed from a nearby airport. Notice how he tilted his camera here to fake a dive, showing an early intuitive knowledge of filmmaking technique. His mother remembers those days well.
I lived in a beautiful house, and I got as far as the carpeting and the drapes and the Steinway, and then he took over. And my house, from the time I can remember, was a studio.
Today, Spielberg's studio is wherever he chooses to work.
Hi, Ken.
Right now, his office is on the lot at MGM. But his introduction to the industry really began during a Universal Studios tour 15 years ago.
You've heard the story before. You know, people get on a movie set and they see the lights and they hear the noise and it's chaos and it's insanity and it's infectious. And I caught this disease that day, whatever this disease has become. So the next day I wore conservative clothes and carried a satchel and walked past Scotty at the gate and waved at him, and he tentatively waved back at me, and I walked onto the lot, and for 3 months, every day, 5 days a week, I walked onto the lot during my summer vacation from high school.
Waved at the guard.
Waved at the guard and watched him make television shows.
Spielberg's persistence paid off. The film Amblin, made while he was in college, won him a contract with Universal Studios, where he directed TV series like Night Gallery and Columbo. At just 20, Spielberg was the youngest director in the studio's history. The TV movie classic Duel was Spielberg's reward for 3 years of successful series directing. Duel pitted actor Dennis Weaver against an ominous pursuing truck and began to establish Spielberg's reputation as a child prodigy and master of cinematic technique.
Duel inspired me to make Jaws because there's great similarities between Duel and Jaws. There was no driver in the truck. There was no consciousness to the shark except to eat. He was an eating machine. People say, you know, gee, the movie's really scary because my imagination saw more of the shark than you actually showed me. Well, part of that was intentional because I thought I could scare people with just the ocean line and just the mystery of what's under the murky water, but also the darn shark wouldn't come out of his dressing room for months. I mean, the thing never worked. The shark on Jaws works much better on the Universal tour than it ever worked on Martha's Vineyard when I made Jaws.
But despite its technical problems, Jaws went on to become the third most popular film of all time. Jaws, like this summer's Poltergeist, was essentially an exercise in fear, created by a director who, as a child, was scared even by the films of Walt Disney, the only movies his parents allowed him to see.
Disney has scared children for over 30 years, and he's done it better than anyone else ever has. And so I would still hide under the covers, and they couldn't understand it. But you just saw Snow White. What are you afraid of? I'm saying the witch. But you saw Fantasia. What was scary about that? The mountain opened up and the devil came out and summoned up the dead. You know, but what about Bambi? Why were you afraid of Bambi? The fire killed the family.
Stephen is the child of American technology and American movies and American suburbia and all these.
Richard Dreyfuss credits Spielberg's direction for the performances that made him a major star. As an actor, what's he like to work with?
He's relaxed and calm and funny, and without anyone knowing how, he makes sure that you do everything he wants you to do.
Is he a dictator on the set?
No, not at all. I mean, you have no idea where the authority is coming from, except somehow, by the end of the day, everything that Stephen wanted to do is done exactly the way he wanted it done.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which followed Jaws, was a triumph for the more positive side of Spielberg's character, his capacity for hope and love.
Translation airlock on their audio signal. We're taking over this conversation now.
Scenes like this one, where human beings attempt to communicate with an alien spaceship by means of music, infused audiences with the director's sense of awe and optimism about outer space.
If starship could travel 100 light years and arrive on Earth. I don't believe they're coming here with laser pistols. I don't believe they're coming here to destroy. I believe they're coming here to study and make contact. And I've always believed that. Even as a kid growing up, I never looked up and saw science fiction as being tentacled and, you know, dark and frightening. It was always very bright and happy.
You know, if there is ever a Nobel Prize given for the best, most benign film, it's got to go to Spielberg. Because look at how nice his films are. I mean, just they're nice. They're about love. They're about wonder. They're about, you know, good things. They're not about rotten, awful things. And that's because that's what Steven responds to. And When You Wish Upon a Star, which was going to be included in the soundtrack of Close Encounters, is Steven. It's him sitting around with Jiminy Cricket going, let's tell a story.
I like to think of myself as being very organized in, you know, my lifestyle, my directing, and everything else, and I keep my history, my memorabilia of all of my home movies right here. This represents about 12 years of my life. In this drawer, and about 3 closets in the other room. This is Steve on his way to the dentist for drilling. Is it safe? This says, late June 78, Spielberg confesses budget for 41 is too high. That's what it says. The last couple days...
The famous director gave us a peek at this particular home movie in which he filmed himself in his rearview mirror on the way into the set of his next movie, 1941.
Now I am attempting to make a comedy that will have to do more than the most successful comedy ever made in order to simply break even. So, we must get the budget down, or I can't make this movie.
Pathetic.
Let's say the studio shouldn't make this movie, and I shouldn't either.
Right, so why didn't I listen?
Why didn't I listen?
Spielberg spent $30 million making 1941, an over-budget sophomoric attempt at comedy. The film was considered an artistic and financial flop by both critics and moviegoers, and marked his first, and so far only, crashing failure.
I was low. I was depressed. I was not feeling good.
What got you out of it?
Starting, just throwing myself back into my work again and starting to work on Raiders.
Burned by the disaster of 1941, Spielberg redeemed himself in the eyes of the movie industry with the success of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Indiana Jones was the hero of Raiders. He won the lady and got the treasure, and I wanted to be the behind-the-scenes hero who brought the film in for under schedule and under budget.
Raiders became the summer hit of 1981 and earned a record-breaking $310 million in just 1 year. But despite its popularity, Raiders disappointed some reviewers, like New Yorker magazine critic Pauline Kael.
I might not have minded it from another director, but coming from Steven Spielberg, whose work had had a great personal warmth and a freshness and youthfulness, to see a film that really looked like a standard, fast, rather sloppy job. Even though it was ingenious, there was nothing personal about it. He'd lost himself. The wonderful thing when you see E.T. is that you've got Spielberg back, that his personality informs the whole movie the way it did on Close Encounters. And partly, I think, because we've come to know him through his films, we want that particular youthful, playful feeling he gives us.
Fork, spoon.
Oh, this is a great one.
This?
Go for it.
Go for it. Go for the big avocado.
Relaxing at home with girlfriend Kathleen Carey, Spielberg's playful nature often bubbles forth in the context of the films he loves.
In all those great Hitchcock movies, we had this kind of a shot. You follow the knife up to the insert. You know, you just hold the frame, hold the air. Hold the air without me in it, you know what I'm saying? And you got this kind of thing, every Hitchcock film. Okay. That's the bird. I should get some hot sauce. Shut up. Why do you skin off? You're so neat. See how she peels the skin off?
You don't want to smash it.
I prefer to take it and just kind of like do this.
Although he admits to being a workaholic, Spielberg claims to have learned the practical reasons why a personal life is necessary.
Everybody's work is their life, but they have to find time to live reality, real life, outside of a soundstage in order to find the new ideas and the juices to put back into their work. So if you don't have both, you can't make movies.
And you get the sense that if Spielberg couldn't make movies, he'd be lost. Before their release, he involved himself in every aspect of both of his latest films. From approving a special effect in E.T.
The lights along the perimeter of the ship need to be a little hotter.
To okaying an ad campaign for Poltergeist.
It knows where you live, and it knows what scares you. Poltergeist.
That's great. That's great. That's the spot.
Music, dramatic, soaring, sometimes almost overpowering, has been one of the trademarks of a Spielberg film. And he seems happiest when a movie is close to completion and he mixes in the musical score.
That's where I felt in the preview that sagged a little bit. Wait, just a little louder. I love mixing because that's when the movie comes alive. It's stillborn until the mix, and that's where it jumps out at you and says, I'm a real movie now. Cut my strings, I can walk and I can talk.
It's not surprising, then, that Spielberg, who's dreamed of being a composer, has always been inspired by music.
Richard Dreyfuss says that if you want to understand Steven Spielberg, you should listen to this song.
Yeah, Steve-O.
Come on, what does he mean by this?
Well, that's when you wish upon a star. Makes no difference who you are. One of the lyrics of that song is, like a boat out of the blue, fate steps in and sees you through. That's your helper. That's the conscience that's your guide. And yet you have to be the master planner of your own future. I've always believed that. I've always believed that.
Well, you know, Disney's first law, Walt Disney's first law was wishing will make it so.
Exactly. And Davy Crockett's law was be sure you're right and then go ahead.
And he is going ahead.
Of course, making more movies. Next, he's got a sequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark, and he's also making a movie based on old Twilight Zone TV episodes.
Powerhouse. Thank you, Steve.